So let's start there on, weirdly, the Tower of Babel. Okay, explain that, what that is, and why that's your focus.
Sure. So I've been a professor since 1995, and I love being a professor. I love universities, and it just seemed like all of a sudden in 2014 something changed. Something changed, like in the fabric of space-time, and weird stuff started happening. And I saw some of that on campus here at NYU. And then Greg Lukianoff came to talk to me. We'd met through a mutual friend in May of 2014, and he said, "John, weird stuff is happening," and he had a theory as to why. Well, it turns out our theory was actually partially wrong. We thought universities were causing this to happen. And now we know, no, this was a much bigger thing happening that affected Gen Z. It affected kids born after 1996. So your kids, my daughter is 12, my son is 15. So I've been trying since 2014 to figure out what on earth happened. Why did so many things change in such weird and strange ways? And I've always been looking for metaphors. I think we need metaphors to understand anything complicated, anything that doesn't sort of fit easily into our minds. And it was when I went back and reread the Babel story. It's a short little story in Genesis. And it's that the descendants of Noah are spreading out across the plain of Shinar, and they decide to build a city with a tower to reach unto heaven. And God thinks this is hubristic. Well, there are a variety of theories I've heard as to why God didn't like this. But in any case, God, he doesn't actually physically destroy the tower. What the text says, and this is the key line, he says, "Let us go down and confuse their language so that they may not understand one another." And so I reread that. I found that story again a couple of years ago and I thought, oh my God, that's it. That's what happened to us. Because it's not just a story about tribalism, like left versus right. That's been getting worse since the 1990s. It's a story about how everything has come apart. And if you have a group of people that are entirely on the left or entirely on the right, they're going to fight and find ways to fragment internally. So something changed. It feels like everything is crumbling since the early 2010s.
And in the metaphor is the new God, social media,
or the devil, or the whatever you want to call it. But
it's not a force for good.
It's not a force for good. And so what I think, look, we've all seen dozens of articles about how social media is destroying everything and destroying kids, and I think why my article is a little different is that I'm a social psychologist, and I wasn't just saying, it's bad and here's why. I was really trying to dig into what exactly is it that it did to social relations? What did it do to communication? And so the story, I think the best way in is to put it in a narrative form, where once upon a time, we had this incredible time of optimism in the 1990s. Those of us old enough to remember the 1990s, when the end of the Cold War and new technology, and America even had a surplus in its debt for the first time in a long time. It was this amazing time of techno-democratic optimism. We thought that we defeated the Soviets, we defeated all the authoritarians. It's going to be liberal democracy from here on in. And then when social media comes in the early days, 2004 or so, people think this is going to be a great force for democracy. This is going to democratize power and voice. And in 2011, that amazing year, begins with the Arab Spring, where Facebook and a few other platforms helped the people of Egypt and Tunisia. It helped them to bring down those Arab dictators. And we thought democracy is going to break out in the Arab world. And that year ends with Occupy Wall Street. And once again, populist movement. Now, this is more of a left-wing populist movement, but the people have power. So it was a time of enormous optimism about the power of this technology to help democracy. But then after that, everything turns around. And now democracy is on the back foot, as they say in Britain. And authoritarians, I know you had Tristan Harris on your show. Tristan points out that China is using this technology to make themselves better authoritarians, as it were. And it's making us worse Democrats, worse at democracy. So what I was trying to show is that the central problem with social media is that it doesn't actually make us communicate. It doesn't, we can communicate with text and Zoom and phone calls. There's all kinds of ways to really talk to someone authentically. But when you put something out on social media, you're performing. And then you wait to see what everyone says about it. And so it's this incentive that makes us want to perform at others to impress still others, often strangers. That's what warps everything. And that's what encourages us to just fight among ourselves constantly. And we can't have a democracy if we're just fighting among ourselves all the time. The founding fathers knew that.
I remember all the good press about social media back in 2011 during the Arab Spring, which also had a different ending than the one that we were hoping for when that broke.
Yeah.
But to me, it's almost like, you go out on the date with the person, and on the first date, the person sweeps you off of your feet, and they're utterly charming, and they're beautiful, and they're smart, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is wonderful. And then you flash forward a few years. This is our relationship with social media as well. And the person's become a stalker. The person's extremely controlling. The person can't let go of you or your time. The person's made you less happy, right? Like, this is the 30,000 foot zoom out on what's happened between us and social media. And by us, I mean our society, our world. It goes beyond America, as you do a good job of pointing out every time you get back to, is it just American girls that are deeply depressed? It's not. If you look at other societies, all of these things are spiking in sort of the Western world. And the beginning, the onset of it is always linked back to right when social media. It's not even just the creation of the iPhone in 2007. It's the birth and explosion of social media, which was the game changer.
That's right.
I want to, this is from your article. You write, something went terribly wrong very suddenly. We are disoriented, unable to speak the same language, back to the Babel comment, or recognize the same truth. We are cut off from one another and from the past. So I was feeling this just last week, or recognize the same truth. In the wake of the terrible Buffalo shooting, look what the country did, right? You must have been watching this, John. Like half the country went to, this is all to be blamed on the right, on the political right. I mean, there was literally an article in Rolling Stone saying that the shooting was a mainstream Republican type of ideology at work. And then, the right looking at it and seeing something very different and being, I think, outraged that anybody tried to blame it on a political party as opposed to radicalization by a guy who was drawn to the internet and wasn't doing well emotionally, mentally, and so on. But it really is at the point where it's just two totally different truths. If you watched MSNBC last week, you would have thought you are an evil person if you are a registered Republican. You are hashtag part of the problem of massive white supremacy and mass shootings in America. And you would have felt something very different had you turned into Fox News or any other more conservative digital media, right? And you could do that on any given week of the year.
Yeah, that's right. So the first thing to keep in mind as we go through this is that most Americans are actually pretty reasonable. Most Americans don't want to attack anyone, destroy the reputation. Most Americans are sick and tired of what's going on. Part of what social media did is it changed who has voice, as it were, because it's always the case. It's always the case that the people on the far right and far left are going to be more passionate. Whoever's more passionate is going to talk more. So they're always going to have more voice, more representation than the people in the middle. But when social media becomes very widely used, and this is really around 2011, 2012, is when most people now have a smartphone and now they can be on it every day, 10, 20, 50 times a day. When social media becomes widely used and it becomes much more viralized, which we'll talk about in a moment, I hope, the extremes are going to have much more voice, and the middle 80% of the country, like, we just keep our head down. We don't want to be in the shooting war. And so it looks as though we all hate each other. It looks as though all there is out there is extremists. That's not true. That's part of the hall of mirrors that social media does to us. Our minds, we evolved to have a really, we really care what public opinion is. We want to size up. What are people thinking? And in a small community, you can actually tell, what people are thinking just by the look on their face as people are talking. But in the social media world, we have no idea what people are thinking. All we know is what people are tweeting or posting on Instagram, whatever it is. And that's never representative of public opinion.
It really is
that's
fake
part
news.
Of what happened to us.
Are you tired of feeling like someone's always watching you on the internet? Maybe advertisers know a little bit too much about you, or you're concerned about the privacy of your identity? Using incognito mode will not solve the problem either. IPVanish VPN is here to protect your right to privacy and help you stay anonymous online. IPVanish helps you safely browse the internet without exposing your private details to third parties. You can use IPVanish on your computer, your tablet, your phones, even devices like your Fire Stick when you're streaming media. When you use IPVanish, all of your data is encrypted. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. It's that simple. IPVanish is actually offering right now an incredible 70% off their yearly plan for our listeners with a 30-day money-back guarantee. That is like getting 9 months for free. IPVanish, super easy to use too. All you have to do is tap one button and you are instantly protected. Take your privacy back today with the brand rated 4.6 out of 5 on Trustpilot by going to ipvanish.com/Megyn and use that promo code Megyn to claim your 70% savings. ipvanish.com/Megyn. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.